Are the Baltimore Ravens gearing up to trade Rashod Bateman before or during the 2024 NFL Draft? We talk about that and so much more coming up next here on this episode of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. As always, I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, coming to you from the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Thanks so much for being here today, making Locked On Ravens your first listen each and every day, free and available as always on all podcasting platforms. So that's in video form on YouTube. You can like the video, subscribe to the channel, also in audio form. We're available for you wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the whole 9 yards there. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Of course, we are a 5-day-a-week Ravens podcast, Monday through Friday, but we're doing a lot more over the course of this week. Obviously, the NFL Draft, it is draft week. We'll have night 1 on Thursday. Obviously, day 2 is Friday, day 3 is Saturday. Shows, literally multiple shows for all 7 days of the week, where we'll get about 2 out, maybe even 3 out during all 3 days of that draft, and obviously your regularly scheduled programming of Monday through Friday. But here with me today on this Taco Tuesday, he's our Taco Tuesday guest this week. It is Rocco DiSangro of Fox 45 and the Ryan Ripken Show. Rocco, the draft that we've been saying, it's been kind of sneaking up on us, and it is now here in full force, and Baltimore has a lot of decisions to make over Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Absolutely, they do, Kev. First of all, digging the new intro, man. Really liked it a lot coming in here.
I'm glad you like it. Yeah, I saw you bopping in the background. Yeah,
it gets the people going, so that's a good thing. No, for the Ravens, man, I mean, this is what it's all about for this fan base, because you don't have football for, a handful of months. You're waiting. You just want to see your team take the field again, play. Sundays can't come soon enough here in Baltimore because the excitement level's there. You got Lamar Jackson, you got Derrick Henry. For this draft, this is like, I don't even want to call it the appetizer, because this is a full course meal for Baltimore. Eric DeCosta especially, I mean, that man is feasting during the draft, especially during this week. The Ravens, they have 9 picks overall, at least 1 in each round. I expect some potential trades, maybe late, days 2 or day 3, to get more picks. Eric DeCosta loves those picks, man. So it'll be interesting to see what the Ravens do with what they got.
Yeah, we're going to dive into all of that for sure, about just the different possibilities and if there are going to be any draft surprises. But speaking of that, Rocco, there's been a lot of conversation, and this has been throughout the whole offseason dating back to last year, about Rashod Bateman and just what his role on this team is, what his role should be on the team. And there's now all this, and again, there's been nothing substantial about anything surrounding Bateman and his future in Baltimore. I just want to put that out. It's just us having the conversation. But the reason I want to talk about the possibility of, hey, you know what, is Baltimore maybe gearing up to trade Rashod Bateman maybe a couple days before or during the draft, is because people here in Baltimore, I mean, everybody went through the same situation a couple of years ago with Marquise Brown, where nobody, I still remember exactly what happened for me. I was doing a live hit on our national draft show that we did that year, and they were like, after I was done the Hamilton pick, they're like, all right, we'll talk to you again at pick 23. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They only have 1 first-round pick. And like, oh, they just traded Marquise Brown. And I'm like, what? What? Like, no one expected it. And again, now after the fact, we understand Marquise Brown wasn't happy, but no one knew. It was a surprise to everybody. So now they're in a similar situation with Rashod Bateman, where depending on if Bateman's unhappy, if the Ravens are just kind of done, again, we don't know if any of that, if that's true or not. But do you see any possibilities, Rocco, that maybe Baltimore does pull out a surprise and trades Rashod Bateman on draft night?
I mean, I guess we won't know until he shows up at another team's draft party, right? Just unannounced. Right. So, dude, nothing would surprise me, Kevin. And you know good and well, Eric DeCosta always has tricks up his sleeves. He's going to put this team in the best position possible to not only for the draft, but for the offseason and beyond. So nothing would truly surprise me. Do I think Rashod Bateman's going to get traded? I don't know. But for the Ravens, if you don't see him, maybe you're not picking up that 5th-year option and you don't see a future with him here in Baltimore and you can get value for him, by all means, it might be the move. But I'm not sure what Eric DeCosta is going to do. I don't know if they pull the trigger and end up doing that. But like what happened with Hollywood Brown, maybe it will be case scenario like that where we just don't know until it actually happens right then and there.
Yeah, and Bateman, if I'm not mistaken, Rocco, he was not at voluntary offseason workouts, right? Is that he's doing his own thing? Saw those workout videos?
I didn't see him in any of the videos, and it looked like he was kind of working out. I believe it was in Arizona, I want to say. Just following him on social media and seeing that. So I think Rashod Bateman right now is doing his own thing. I'll say this, the guys we did see there, Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers, Lamar Jackson, Roquan was there, Matabike, I'm pretty sure was there as well. The leaders of the team were there, but again, these are voluntary off-season programs, voluntary off-season workouts. They're for players to either, they don't have to be there. It's not mandatory. But I know fans, they feel some type of way when the big names or when certain players might not be there in attendance, especially when you got a guy like Rashod Bateman. It's up in the air what his future is going to be like here in Baltimore. So I'm not sure what the case is going forward with him. I don't know if, like I said, I don't know if the Ravens really do see a future here with Rashod Bateman or he sees a future here with Baltimore. But if he does and they do, I'm sure the two sides will come together and, I don't know if there's any love lost or anything right now or any bad blood. I really don't think that's the case. But if there is, that needs to be they need to make amends before the season begins if the two sides do see a future together here in Baltimore.
Right. And that's the thing I always try to say is these are voluntary. So
yeah.
I'm not like docking Rashod Bateman for not being there. I mean, look, it's great if I would prefer everybody to show up. I'm sure the team would too. But again, you're allowed to do your own thing during those voluntary. Now, again, if we get the mandatory stuff and Bateman doesn't show up, obviously that's a bigger issue. But we're not there yet. So I'm not docking him for that. But the thing with Bateman too, Rocco, and you mentioned that fifth-year option, is this is year 4 for Rashod Bateman. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there have been injuries. There have been disappointing years in terms of production from him. But that a couple of years, whether it is picking up that fifth-year option or if he has a great year and you want to extend him after the season if you decline it, there's going to be a lot of money involved in a Rashod Bateman contract. That fifth-year option pushes 13, 14 million for that one season. So, look, not cheap for Rashod Bateman. And if you're the Ravens and you're not sure or there's any sense of doubt and like, hey, is this a guy we really want to tie up that money into, whether it's for 1 year or long term? That's kind of the situation. And I was talking about that a couple of years ago with Marquise Brown, Rocco, and it was a little more magnified with a Greg Roman offense where receivers essentially were not valued in that offense the way that they are in a typical NFL offense, to where if Marquise Brown wanted that 15 per year, 20 million per year extension, why would the Ravens pay him that if wide receiver is not a focal point? So that made sense. But now obviously in a Todd Monken system, we've seen that shift. And I think it was a very welcome shift for a lot of people. But you could essentially get draft capital. And again, the word reset is a little harsh here because they do have Zay Flowers. But if they trade Bateman, Nelson Aguilar is not a long-term piece. We're not really sure about Tylan Wallace at this point. Deontay Hardy right now, I mean, again, more for special teams. We talked about that as well. It feels like if Bateman goes, the Ravens could maybe endure this offensive line-esque rebuild with their wide receiver group where Linderbaum is the shiny star out of everybody. There's one not so long-term piece in Ronnie Stanley. Everything else is kind of questionable. If Bateman goes, you have the shiny star in Zay Flowers, Nelson Aguilar, not the long-term piece, and then questions everywhere else as well.
Yeah, man, we could see that, Kev. I'm not sure what the Ravens wide receiver room is going to look like, but the hope is that they can build it up through the draft. I don't know if they're taking a receiver in the first round like they did with Zay Flowers last year, but potentially in the second round, in the early rounds. Eric DeCosta views this as a position group, this and offensive line both, that have a ton of depth in the later rounds, which is, I mean, that's a good sign for the Ravens if they're picking there. But for Rashod Bateman, you talked about the value in potentially giving him a 1-year deal and bringing him on, picking up that option. What would you say it was, $14 million?
Yeah, right around 13, 14, yep.
Would they pay Odell Beckham Jr.? They paid him, what was it, 18 mil, 15 guaranteed?
Yeah.
I don't think that this fan base, and I don't know if the Ravens value Rashod Bateman right now in that price range, and they shouldn't until he produces. Listen, if you're going to take a chance on him and he turns out to be this star wide receiver that fans wanted him to be when the Ravens took him in the first round, that's great. But to take a chance on a guy that has struggled to stay healthy, And I mean, to be honest, man, he's underperformed throughout his career. I hate to say it because it is what it is. I'm not trying to knock him as a person or a player, but like it's facts. He's underperformed. People thought Rashod Bateman was going to be, I remember putting out like a tweet and asking this fan base. It was like 2 years ago. Who's going to be the breakout receiver for the Ravens this year? Everyone called me a dummy because they're like, what are you, stupid? It's going to be Rashod Bateman. And I was new to the area. I'm going to cut myself some slack there. So I was just trying to throw out a question for our Twitter poll for Fox 45 to generate some traction and get some answers so we could put the responses out there. But this fan base believed in Rashod Bateman. I don't know where that belief is right now, Kevin. I really, truly don't. There are a lot of people that doubt this guy. I really hope Rashod Bateman in year 4, year 5 and beyond can be the receiver that Baltimore and a lot of other people know that he can be. But right now, he is just not there, man. And I hate to say it, and it sucks to say it, but that's the truth, and facts are facts right now.
Right, and I think there are still a lot of people, even if they do want to see Bateman traded, that believe there is still potential there. The thing, though, is can they bank on that? Potential is such a fickle thing in all of professional sports, right? Where a guy has all these great skills and all these great traits, but if they can't put it together, you're essentially handicapping your team to a point where you're just not getting the production you need out of a certain position. So for a lot of people, look, this is the Lamar Jackson era's prime, right? Lamar right now, he's entering that, and he's playing at a super high level. I mean, we've seen him. He's a 2-time MVP. He is the guy, but you have to maximize each and every season. And I think for a lot of people, the questions are you maximizing Lamar Jackson with a player that has potential? We know he has potential, but he's not been able to be on the same page as Lamar. There hasn't been enough chemistry. The injuries have been there in the production assets. So personally, I think there's a ton of potential in Rashod Bateman. I still believe Rashod Bateman can be a quality NFL player, but is that going to be in Baltimore or is that going to be somewhere else? I think that's the big question here.
Yeah, Kevin, you're absolutely right. And this isn't a case of Patrick Queen gradually getting better and better and better, and then he turns in a Pro Bowl season when they decline his 5th-year option. This is a case of Rashod Bateman is underproduced in his time in the National Football League, and the Ravens saying, okay, like we're banking on him having a big season this season, despite what he's done in the past. So it's a tough decision to make for Eric DeCosta. I know he'll make the right one. I know this fan base does as well. But it's like, what if he does just go off this season in year 4 and the Ravens decline the 5th-year option? And then what if he has a, Pro Bowl career going forward? That is the hope for Rashod Bateman's career. But right now at this point in time, you just don't know what Rashod Bateman you're going to get in year 4.
Right. And that's the thing where for a lot of people, they want the production now. And it has to be in the moment. I mean, look, we're talking about it with baseball, Rocco, all over the place with the Orioles and Jackson Holiday. And I know it's a little bit of a different situation, but everybody wants the production now. But for Bateman, he is entering year 4. And coming up in the second part of the show, we're going to finish out this conversation with a couple of more points on Rashod Bateman, assessing where his value even is right now. And also talking about some strengths and worry positions on this team. Stay tuned. Plenty to talk about on the show. First, the show is brought to you by Game Time. There have been plenty of times where I've had frustrating ticket buying experience, especially with MLB games. Sometimes I wasn't sure if the seats were good. Other times I couldn't find last-minute tickets. Sometimes there were no good deals at all. But Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. In the Game Time app, there's so many amazing features there. And for me, I'm an Orioles fan, right? I'm from Baltimore. Obviously, those are Locked On Ravens, right? So big Orioles guy. And for me, I'm going to try to get down to Camden Yards a lot this year, especially when it comes to those AL East matchups. I'm really looking forward to those. But the features on the Game Time app, they include last-minute deals where you can save up to 60% off buying last minutes for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Plus flash deals, zone deals, all-in pricing, seat views, lowest price guarantee, Game Time ticket coverage, and so much more. Get the guys we're going to buy and tickets with Game Time down the Game Time app. Create an account. Use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. So to apply again, create an account. Redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, spelled LOCKEDONNFL, for $20 off. Down the Game Time app to the last minute ticket lowest price guarantee. We are back. Our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher and Rocco DiSangro still talking with you. And Rocco, we talk about potential, talk about everything that Rashod Bateman could potentially do. That's the word of the day. It's potential. But with where the Ravens are, you mentioned it at the end of the first segment there in terms of them needing to trust him in a role. Well, the Ravens did this to him a couple of years ago where they decided to go uber young at the position. And I was here on Locked On Ravens all off season saying, I don't know about this. You know, they brought in Sammy Watkins as their one big veteran, and obviously he had some moments, but it didn't necessarily work out for him. But they made Bateman the number one wide receiver coming off of a rookie season where, you know, had the injury, had some ups and downs. Devin Duvernay was their number 2. That was too young. Zay Flowers showed enough in year 1 to say, all right, you know what? You feel pretty confident in him. If he's your number 1, that's fine. But now Bateman is the number 2 and essentially the clear-cut number 2. For some people, they're just saying, well, this is just a lesser extent of what happened in 2021. Do you feel confident enough in Rashod Bateman to trust what the Ravens are doing if Bateman stays, that he can be the number 2 and produce in that role?
Yes, and I hope he can. If he is healthy and I see success in his future, and I really want this guy to succeed because there are so many doubters out there, rightfully so, but I could see him being a number 2. I think when Rashod Bateman, it was the year after his second year in the league, when they had that wide receiver room with Sammy Watkins, Devin Duvernay, James Prochet, it was young. And the question was, it was much like the edge rushers last year. It was like, are the Ravens going to go out and get a veteran and bring in a veteran to maybe not necessarily help these guys out, but yeah, help these guys out, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, and maybe potentially be that number 1 option for Lamar. Rashod Bateman and James Prochet, they kind of came in with chips on their shoulders a little bit, it seemed like, you know what, we can handle this. We're going to be the guys. But that really didn't end up being the case, and it's unfortunate. And then the following year, I think that was last year, I'm you know, my years are mixed up now, man. They bring in, so that was what, 2 years ago. This past year, they bring in Aguilar. They bring in Odell Beckham Jr., Lamar Jackson obviously gets his huge extension, which is big, but bolstering the receiver room, you need to surround Lamar Jackson with weapons, not only at the running back position like they did with Derrick Henry, give him some more weapons to throw to. I would absolutely love that. And this fan base would love that as well, because I mean, you've seen what Lamar Jackson can do with not as many weapons. You keep him healthy, you have Derrick Henry in the backfield. I really, truly believe the possibilities are endless for the Ravens, not only offensively, but then you see what they have on the defensive side of the ball with Roquan, with Kyle Hamilton, with Justin Madubuike and others leading the way. This could be one of the best teams in the AFC again, and hopefully they can take it a step further, depending what they do in the draft, depending what they do in the offseason with these moves.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the blame. That was on me. I mixed up my years. It's been a long week, and it's only recording this on Monday, so it's the longest week of the year. Last year was the young year. 2021 was when Bateman was drafted. They brought in Demarcus Robinson as their veteran guy. Sammy Watkins was 2 years, but then they brought Watkins back last year because everybody was getting injured. And I said on the show all year, it was, look, if Bateman goes down as your number 1, you're done. Like there's no way. And then not only Bateman, but Duvernay also. He broke his foot and he's done. Yeah. So then it's like
forgetting about D-Rob too. D-Rob had the best season right out of like any of them that season. Yeah. So it's like that was like what a crazy group of wide receivers that was, man. It's like I feel like Ravens fans are gonna look back years from now and be like, wow, like sometimes they were tough times. I mean, but they were good times as well.
And that's when the Aguilar signing happened, obviously he was known for the whole drop situation in Philly with the, you know, catching babies on like Aguilar or whatever that whole meme was. Oh. So when he was signed, everyone was like, oh man, here we go again. It's the same veteran and that's going to be it. So the Odell signing was what people at the time needed, even though the deal in its own right was an overpay. It's what needed to happen to, 1, get Lamar back into Baltimore, but 2, it showed that, hey, no, we can go out there, we can spend at wide receiver for Lamar. So that was a key thing. But Rocco, where do you even value Bateman right now? Like if they were to trade him, obviously the compensation coming back to Baltimore would be a big conversation point. So they got a first-round pick from Marquise Brown. I doubt that happens for Rashod Bateman. I wouldn't anticipate that. would you expect a day 2 pick? Is this like just you move him and you get a 4th rounder? Like, where do you value him right now?
Maybe like, I was going to say 4, maybe 3, like a high 3rd round pick. But I don't even know about, like, I don't know what other teams' thought processes are. And I don't know, Eric DeCosta can wheel a deal. So he's going to try to get the best value regardless if they do end up trading Bateman, whether that be a 4th rounder, whether they package Bateman with one of their own picks and try to get something even bigger than that. That could be a possibility, Kevin. I'm glad I don't have to make these decisions because I'd be ripping the little hair I have left out of my head right now. So, yeah, I really truly don't know, man. I couldn't even give you a ballpark, but I would figure day 2 pick. Probably that's where I would think that Bateman is valued right now.
Yeah, I'd probably say I'd make it'd probably be a 3 for me. Where I'd have him right now, like right around there.
Third round or day 3? You're saying
third round.
Okay, yeah.
So I'd say anywhere in the 2 to 4 range. Honestly, I don't think they're getting a 1st. And look, I was shocked they got a 1st from Marquise Brown from Arizona with his contract coming up the way it was. So, I mean, look, Eric, you said it. Eric DeCosta's done it before. So nothing is out of the realm of possibility here. But that's the other part of the conversation where it's like, do you package Bateman with like your 3rd round pick and try to move up and get another 2nd? Or do you package Bateman with 30? And do you try to move up if there's a guy you really like and maybe draft a wide receiver that's falling like a Brian Thomas Jr. potentially? Like there are options there. So it doesn't have to just be Bateman for one singular pick straight up. There are other ways they can do it. But in terms of if the Ravens would be making a mistake here, Rocco, if Baltimore moved on, if they traded him at the draft, do you think that the potential he has is too much to give up on at this point? He's only entering year 4. And I think a lot of people are caught up in the fact that, yeah, he's coming up on that 2nd contract, but would you deem it a mistake if the Ravens were to move on from Bateman, not knowing what he is and what he's going to be at this point for his entire NFL career?
Not if they could get the best value for him, because you could find receivers in the draft. You could find receivers. I mean, you can go out and trade for a receiver that is better than Rashod Bateman right now if you can. Again, not a knock on him, but it's just the truth. But I don't know, Kevin. I think like if a team believes in Rashod Bateman that the Ravens are going to trade and they could have the rights to that 5th-year option and say, okay, like we're going to bring him in and not get 1 year out of him, but 2 years out of him, that would make sense for a team to trade for Rashod Bateman. I think if what were you saying? Go ahead.
No, I was going to bring up a trade that I'm going to compare it to. So yeah, keep going. I'll bring it up in a second.
Yeah, I'll buy you more time, buddy.
Thank you.
But when it comes to that, it's if the Ravens are going to move on, I don't think there's going to be any regret from either side if that does happen. I don't think the Ravens are going to be like, oh man, like we miss Rashod so much. It's like he's doing great with another team. They're going to find the best fits for them. But like I said, if it's with Rashod Bateman here, and if they see the potential and Eric DeCosta's having that conversation like, hey, man, we believe in you. We think that you're capable of having a really big season in year 4 and beyond, and that's why we're going to take this chance. Then they're going to take the chance. But again, Kevin, obviously, like we play the hypothetical game a lot, and that's sometimes what the flock's going to get right now, especially leading up to the NFL draft. But Eric DeCosta, like I said, he's going to do what is best for the team going forward. If that's keeping Rashod Bateman in Baltimore, they're going to keep Rashod Bateman in Baltimore. If it's trading him to a different team and getting the best bang for your buck out of a trade, he's going to do that. Regardless, I don't think that you still have Zay Flowers. You still have Nelson Aguilar this season. And whatever the Ravens do in the draft, you have that as well. Maybe they wait till after to move him. Who knows? I don't know what the best case scenario for the team is. But EDC is going to make the best decisions possible. And he's going to – I'm telling you what, man, nothing would surprise me again with what he does, the decisions he makes in the draft. It's just he's a man that is very hard to read. And then he just makes the moves, and they're so calculated.
And you know what? That's how it should be. That's what I was talking about, the Marquise Brown trade. No one knew what was happening. Eric DeCosta certainly knew what was happening. And, it's just pulled it off for the world to see. The trade I was talking about, though, and I agree with you, where I don't think it's a mistake if you get the right value. But you don't want to just say, oh, you know what, we're done, and just essentially move them for nothing. For example, the Justin Fields situation in Chicago, everybody knew they were taking Caleb Williams. There wasn't really any debate about that. But then they trade Justin Fields for a 2025 conditional 6th rounder. And so you're like, there were talks about, oh, Fields could go for like the Atlanta, what was it, number 8 pick or something, or you could get a 2nd round pick. But to me, I would have just kept him at that point and just said, hey, you know what? You're going to back up Caleb. Like, that's how it's going to be. Or you're going to be the guy for a year. And it caused so much controversy if they sat Caleb for Justin. But regardless, you sit him behind Caleb and you just try to see if, like, hey, we can get more value maybe at the deadline. Now that 6th can go to a 4th. But regardless, it's like if the Ravens get a day 2 pick for Bateman, like, okay, like, that's good value. But if you just move them for a 6th or a 7th or a conditional 5th or something, like, there's still too much potential, in my opinion, to make that type of trade. I'm not giving up on Rashod Bateman for nothing. He still has value. And if I'm the Ravens, I want to get that value instead of just giving him away for nothing.
The only way I think that we'll see something like that happen, Kevin, that they just want to get rid of him to get rid of him, is if mandatory minicamp comes around and he's not showing up. And then that's when you say, okay, this is the last resort. We got to move on. We got to see what we can get for him. I'm going to work the phone lines and see what teams are trying to bring Rashod Bateman in. We'll see what the best available, whether it's a draft pick, whether it's a player, whether it's something else, you go there. But I agree with you, man. I don't think you just move on from Rashod Bateman just to move on from Rashod Bateman. I think there is potential, like we've talked about. And I think the Ravens, I really, truly do think they see that. I'm not sure how the rest of the NFL views Rashod Bateman right now as a trade piece or a guy that, they're calling up about, but time will tell.
Yep. So we're going to see. Draft is on Thursday, and maybe a move is made then. Coming up, though, I know there was an extended conversation on Rashod Bateman, so we'll get into areas of strength and worry, plus some more draft surprises in the final part of the show. Stay tuned. We still got a lot coming to you on Locked On Ravens. First, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp, and this next segment is brought to us by our sponsor, BetterHelp. Sometimes you all need the opportunity to get something off our chest, big or small. Certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased on your life. So today I want to say how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking about the same thing this week. And for me, look, it's draft week, so I have to get this off of my chest for the Ravens. I think offensive line is the biggest need, right? But I would not be mad at them if they were to go defense. I know that the Ravens invest a lot in their defense. Not, the investment hasn't necessarily been, I guess, even on the offensive side of the ball in certain cases. But I think you have to build up both sides of the ball, and it's a really deep draft class. So if there's a cornerback that, for me, I think corner is the one I'm looking at. If there's a good corner available, and there's also a good offensive lineman available, I would not be mad if Baltimore were to take that cornerback, although I do know the Ravens will have to address the offensive line if they don't address that need in the first round. But therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems in our favorite sports teams, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. If they're going to start in therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. And this show is brought to you by FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks. All in an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. For me, I'm a big Denver Nuggets guy, so if you're betting on the Nuggets to win this game 2 against the Lakers, hey, you know what? I'm hoping that's going to be the case. They're probably going to lose, though. It's a weird feeling, but you know what? If you want to bet Lakers, you can do that as well over on FanDuel. Any other props as well. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockdown and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We return on Locked On Ravens with Rocco DiSangro. I am Kevin Ostreicher, talking Ravens football, just days away from the NFL draft. We have a lot coming up in terms of draft content here on the show, so be sure to subscribe, follow along in video form and in audio form. We're going to have shows all 7 days this week, so gear up for a lot of draft content here on Locked On Ravens. But Rocco, with the draft just moving away from the Bateman conversation, the Ravens have the 30th pick. They have plenty of positions of need, also some positions that look pretty strong for them at the moment. How do you feel about the overall construction of their roster right now, and where are some of the areas of strength and worry you can highlight?
Strength, I feel like, I mean, at the running back position, while Eric DeCosta still didn't rule out drafting a running back in the later rounds, but you have Derrick Henry, and when Keaton Mitchell is healthy, you hope they're the 1-2 punch in the backfield. So right there, looking at the defensive line and who the Ravens have right now, especially on the interior defensive linemen, we're talking about those guys with Matabike leading the charge. I think that's a big strength currently right now as well. And then I don't necessarily view it as a strength, but not a weakness. Maybe I'm in the middle with it right now, is edge. And I know that's a position of need for the Ravens, but bringing back Kyle Van Noy was huge. Getting him back was big. Odafe Owe, much like Rashod Bateman, we're not sure what his future holds in Baltimore with the 5th-year option coming up. Could he be poised for a big season in year 4? And then you look at the other guys on the edge. David Ajabo, what is he capable of when he's healthy? We still don't know. We haven't seen that since college. Ravens flock wants to know. The team wants to know. They took a chance on this guy with the injury history. It's kind of bit them in the rear end to start, but the hope is that David Ajabo can turn in a healthy season and the Ravens can really see what a 1-2 punch of Ajabo and Odafe Owe and then Kyle Van Noy leading the charge can look like in Baltimore. And then you got a guy like Tavius Robinson entering year 2. What is he capable of? You know, you saw some of him last season. You didn't see a whole lot. You saw flashes. He was still very raw when they drafted him out of Ole Miss as a pass rusher. But what can he turn into? You know, they took a shot on him as well. So that's a position group that while I have questions about, I think there's a whole lot of potential there as well. But yeah, those 2 positions right now for me, you got running back, you got D-line, you got edge as well. I see them as positions of strength. Edge, not so much as the other 2 currently.
Yeah, and you talk about them being strengths, and I agree with you. But that, again, as you mentioned, that does not rule out the Ravens drafting a guy, especially they have 9 picks. Would not be shocked if they added a few more over the course of the 3 days of the draft. So, look, you're not going to take 7 offensive linemen and 5 wide receivers. Like you're going to spread it out and make sure you're drafting not only for next year, but also for the future, which they've done a good job at. A couple others, Rocco. I think safety is one as well I look at. And they have Kyle Hamilton and Marcus Williams, but I mean, I think that's it. Like they have Geno Stone is gone, Daryl Worley's still the free agent. I would not be shocked if they drafted a safety just to replace Geno Stone, try to get a guy who's a ball hawk. And then inside linebacker is an interesting one to me because Patrick Queen is obviously gone. They have a lot of belief in Trenton Simpson. I'm not expecting Baltimore to draft an inside linebacker early, but wouldn't be shocked if maybe they want to grab a special teams guy late. Now, they do have depth. They brought back Chris Bohr. Josh Ross is there. Malik Harrison they brought back as well. So that's one where I'm kind of like, could they not? But for me, I think those 2 are the other ones that I'm looking at. I mean, the strength positions. I mean, quarterback, you're not touching an early round quarterback, right?
Tight end, you have Mark Andrews.
No Brock Bowers coming to Baltimore this year.
Those are the obvious ones, though, Kev. Like,
right now,
I was trying to think a little outside the box. Like, I knew, but I was going to actually say that as well because I don't want people freaking out and saying, "Oh, you guys don't think the quarterback position's strong?" Yes, I think the quarterback position's very strong. You got a 2-time MVP back there leading the charge. So.
Well, you and I were talking about it on the Ryan Ripken show where I would not be shocked if Baltimore drafted a quarterback. Now, obviously not for the starting job, but for the backup position where Tyler Huntley's now in Cleveland. Josh Johnson and Malik Cunningham are your other options. Josh Johnson is not a long-term piece. Malik Cunningham, we don't really know who he is still at this moment. Again, we use that word potential, but we don't know what it's going to turn into. Yeah. So, again, I think we mentioned Joe Milton and a couple other guys that, you know, if they want to spend one of those like 200s, they have 3 picks in the 200s. They want to put a 200s pick down there. I think it's definitely possible. Now, we talked about this too, Rocco, the whole BPA thing with Baltimore. They're a BPA team. It's worked out for them really well. Guys like Kyle Hamilton, Marlon Humphrey, and plenty of other examples. Those are BPA picks when you look back on it. But in terms of draft surprises, something that would surprise me is if Baltimore took a defensive lineman in the first round. Wouldn't necessarily shock me because they've done something like it before. But if they took like a Johnny Newton, you mentioned that defensive line group, it is stout, it is strong. There is a lot of depth there. But if he's the highest graded guy on their board, do they just say, you know what? Yeah, Michael Pierce, not a long-term option. Brent Urban, not a long-term option. We'll see you at Project Washington. I know he's on that 3-year deal, but maybe they do that. I also think another one would be a safety. Now, I don't think there's a safety that's going to be taken in the first round in general. Maybe somebody super late. But I think if you're the Ravens, you really want to focus offensive line. You want to focus wide receiver. Corner would not shock me as well. Are there any other positions that would surprise you if the Ravens took in the first round?
Quarterback? No.
Well, yeah, that'd certainly be a shocker.
Inside linebacker, like we kind of talked about, like if the Ravens were to just like, all right, best player available is an inside linebacker, like we got the best guy right here, that would just confuse everyone. And it's like you drafted Patrick Queen's replacement in Trenton Simpson. You have an all-pro and one of the best inside linebackers in all of football in Roquan Smith. That would be crazy. Now, I don't see that happening at all, but that's why it would be the most surprising, like something like that. I'm trying to think of another potential position that would really like throw me off if they.
I'll give you one is running back in round 2 or running back even on day 2. Like I could see it happening, but first of all, there is not a first round running back in this class. Like there will not be a running back taken on Thursday night. I'd be completely shocked. But I think a lot of people would kind of be wondering the plan. You sign Derrick Henry to an $8 million per year contract. You know, it's up to $10 million per year, but you invest that high level capital in him, which again, I think it's a fine investment. I'm not mad at it. But then if you go and you spend your second round pick on a Jalen Wright or Braylon Allen or Blake Corum and guys that I don't even know if are going to be available, you know, in round 4 or 5, like I'd be fine taking them then, but some of those guys probably aren't going to be available. I would much rather see the Ravens continue to address needs with BPA in there, like a corner, like an offensive lineman, like a wide receiver. Running back, you signed Derrick Henry. I'm personally not investing high capital money-wise and high money draft capital-wise into that position, especially knowing where it stands right now in general, and the fact that they don't only have Derrick Henry. It's also Justice Hill. You got to worry about also, well, when Keaton Mitchell comes back, he's going to take snaps too. So if you're drafting a guy in the second round, how easy is it to move that guy to essentially, hey, you're a game day inactive?
Yeah, it wouldn't be crazy if it happened because we've seen crazier things happen, but it would be nice to see the Ravens just address their needs early on. I like the, best player available mentality is a mentality to have, but I think for the Ravens, they have a couple position groups. Obviously they need, and it's like best player available. We're going to see them go for those position groups, whether like we talked about. I know people don't consider edge a strength, even though I say it's not a top strength of this team, but I still think that Kyle Van Noy, like bringing him back and then having the potential there, it could potentially be a good group. But we use that word a lot. I think we've, take a drink for every time we said potential on Locked On Ravens. And I'm not saying of what, I'm just saying take a drink in general. You'll either be hydrated or you won't. But we've said it a lot because that's what we're looking at right now. But yeah, Kev, to your point, running back day 2 would be surprising. It'd be nice to see the Ravens go maybe, offensive lineman or corner in the first round and then flip-flop those positions for the second round and so on and so forth. And maybe not pick apart every single position right there, but get your needs. Best player available. If there's a great offensive tackle right there at pick 30, you got to go with him. But if you value the corner more right there, maybe you're going to go corner. I know Ravens fans, some of them are on the fence about receiver. If there's a top receiver there, like a receiver that really fell and that has like early first round talent that the Ravens view as one of their best players on their board and they're there, would it surprise you to see the Ravens go with the receiver in the first round? To me, it's like, I don't know if they do that because they just drafted Zay Flowers last season, but we talk about Lamar Jackson, the weapons, giving him all the weapons you can give him. Obviously, first and foremost, we talked about this though before, Kev, your quarterback needs to be protected. So I really, truly feel like, all right, offensive line, corner, those are 1 and 2 for me. And I think those are 1 and 2 for you as well.
Yeah, it all starts up front. for an offense. It's honestly both in the trenches, offense and defense. So Ravens defensive line is pretty squared away right now, but the offensive line certainly, Rocco, as we've talked about, has just a few holes on it that Baltimore does have to fill. A lot of them. But Rocco, I appreciate you. Thanks so much for hopping on. As always, tell people where they can find you, what you're working on here. As again, draft just 2 days away now.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy. Draft week is here. Cannot wait for it. You can find me on Fox 45, Sports Unlimited. Do segments on there all the time. We'll have you covered draft-wise. We'll try to get those picks up there as soon as humanly possible on the web and on air when we do have our hits. My hope, though, Kevin, is that the Ravens get their pick in before like our 11:30 show ends.
Yeah.
Or 11 o'clock show ends, because there's a chance I might not even have the Ravens pick in my show that night. You can find me there. You can find me Ryan Ripken Show, and then we do a podcast, Ryan and I, Rip and Rock. So anywhere there, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, I'm at Rocco DiSangro. Hit me up. Let me know what you think of my work and the work we do. And listen, no hard feelings. I have thick skin when it comes to that. So if you don't like me, if you don't like my stuff, that's okay. I understand. Not a lot of people do.
Rocco's a ray of sunshine, everybody. We know he is. We know he's a ray of sunshine. So give Rocco your support. The links to all his work will be in the description down below. As always, Rocco, always appreciate you hopping on, my man. And thank you for tuning into Locked On Ravens today. Again, be sure to subscribe, follow along video form and audio form. We have a ton of draft content coming your way this week into the weekend. Multiple live shows, multiple regular shows as well. We do our regular scheduled programming Monday through Friday. So speaking of which, coming up tomorrow on Locked On Ravens, more Ravens content. Stay tuned. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.